Hello, I'm Lucas Horrocks and welcome to my Julii faction guide for Rome Total War. Today we're going to be looking at the units that are available for the Julii faction of Rome and also the buildings available and their starting position on the campaign map. And I'm going to be talking through some tips and advice that I'd be giving to people if they were thinking of starting a Julii campaign with the Romans. So first of all, we're going to have a look at the units. As I said in the previous episode, the Roman units are all exactly the same apart from the gladiators available. Each faction has a different gladiator each, so we're going to be looking at that. If you want to see all the different Roman units that are available for the Julii, Scipii and Brutii, go to the first faction video of the Scipii, where I go through every single unit that the Julii have available, bar the gladiators. So I'll go through the Hastati and the Praetorian cohort, etc. So if you want to see that, then go over to that video. But if not, we're going to be looking at the Julii gladiators available, and then we'll be getting straight into the campaign map and having a look at it from there. Okay, so these are the Julii units available, exactly the same as all the other Roman factions apart from the gladiators. So the gladiator available are Samnite gladiators. They have 14 attack and 14 defense, so in terms of the stats, slightly better than the Brutii gladiators. All the gladiators have excellent morale, and they have good armor, for example, and stuff like this. So the difference with gladiators are they are individual fighters. They're very good individual fighters rather than fighters in a unit. Because if you think about it, gladiators they used to fight generally one-on-one in the arenas. So yeah, that's the reason for that. These guys are very heavily armored, which is good. They can stand up to quite a lot and they're good fighters. As I said, always the only weakness really of them is that there's only 40 soldiers in a unit. So if they're going up against other units, let's say 81 or 80 soldiers, for example the cohorts of Rome, then they're going to be slightly outnumbered and they're more likely to fall if they're going one-on-one against those guys. So we're going to be now looking at the campaign map for the Julii and seeing what I would go from there.
Did you think I'd be out here on the frontier without good reason? Yes, Rome needs a strong frontier. No, Rome doesn't need unwashed barbarians at her gates. So, that's why I'm here, the leader of the Julii, to bring Roman order to stinking Gauls. Revenge? That'd be good too. This war against the Gauls won't last long. And when it's done, I've got plans. This is all about power. Power in Rome. Going down that road means dealing with all my rivals. The Senate, the Greeks, those Carthaginian elephant riders, the Scipii and the Brutii families too. After all, the man who controls Rome rules the world. And one day, I will be emperor.
Okay, so this is the first screen you see if you choose the Julii as the faction to play as. And the first thing the Senate wants you to do is take the settlement of Segesta up in the north of Italy. We'll look at that in a second. But first of all, I want to have a look at the Julii starting position. So the Julii own two settlements, much like all the other Roman factions bar the Senate. And they own Arretium and Ariminum. So in Ariminum, there is a general in here, Quintus Julius. And his army consists of himself and 2 town watch. that is not particularly strong. Looking at the other Roman factions, they have Hastati and Velites already in their cities as garrison, whereas the town watch are, quite frankly, very much inferior. So that is something to look at. As for Arretium, they have Lucius Julius with 2 units of Hastati. That's slightly better. And then they have 2 armies that are hanging around outside. Vibius Julius, a family member with 2 Hastati units and a Velites. That's an alright starting army. And then Flavius Julius, the strongest army of the Julii at the beginning, with the faction leader Flavius Julius himself, 2 Hastati, a Triarii, and some archers. So this is definitely the most versatile and strong army that you get at the beginning of the game. Now, I say this every time, but I'm going to say it again. At the beginning of the game, the game instructs you, they pushes you for the Julii to expand north into Gaul. Essentially, there's a rebel settlement here, sort of like an easy settlement to take. The game eases you into it by saying, take this rebel settlement, it's really easy, which it is. There's only 2 units of garrison. I would imagine it would be hoplites and some peasants or something like that, or skirmishers of some sort. Nothing that will be able to stand up to your Julii units. And then traditionally you go up, you take Batavium, you take the settlement here, and then you expand into Gaul, and then maybe eventually Spain if you feel like it. So that's the way the game pushes you. I would personally advise against that unless you are an absolute beginner, and the reason is that you can take a huge amount of land. It's easy to conquer Gaul. Gaul is weak, they have weak units at the beginning of the game. You can take the whole of France, you can take the whole of Spain, you can even take the whole of Germania, and you'll have a huge amount of land, but you won't be particularly rich, and you won't be particularly technologically advanced either. The reason for that is these settlements here are barbarian settlements, and barbarian settlements can only get up to level 3 traditionally, and they're not going to be particularly strong. If you leave it for a bit, by the time you get up here into the north of France, the settlements aren't going to be advanced at all. Whereas, for example, the Brutii, by the time they get all the way over here to southern Greece, Athens is going to be a big city. So they can get into Athens, and then they have access to troops way before the Julii can. The only thing that the Julii have in benefit is this settlement. I go on about it every time. It's Patavium. It's a city with a huge population growth, approximately 7 or 8% depending on the tax rate, and that means that obviously as it's has a large population growth, it can get up to a huge city quicker than most other towns by virtue of the fact that it's just growing so rapidly. So if you want access to troops early on, I would recommend taking Patavium. However, if you're more advanced, I recommended this with the Scipii faction guide. You can just jump straight to Greece. There is nothing to stop you. You can get a navy. There is a naval force of the Julii, I believe. Unfortunately, it's on this side of Italy, so slightly inconvenient. But you could sail straight over to Greece. It's more difficult as the Julii because their starting position and the Brutii might beat you to it, although they will likely take Apollonia and Salona, these 2 settlements along here first. So yeah, you could go for Greece. Greece is highly profitable. And also, as the civil war is approaching towards the end of the game, you don't want the other factions to be too strong. If the Brutii expand into Greece, they're going to get stronger, and they're going to get stronger than you. They're going to have better troops, they'll have urban cohort and all sorts by the end of the game, whereas you might be stuck because you have less cities and you have less money, so or less valuable cities anyway. As I say, the most valuable cities in the game generally are those that border the Mediterranean Sea. France has very little access to such settlements, and the ones they do have access to on the south of France and the east of Spain, and they're not hugely profitable ones, whereas settlements that the Brutii have are in Greece. They're really profitable. Kydonia is a great settlement, and then Scipii have Carthage and Thapsus and the island of Sicily, which is very profitable as well in comparison to the Julii. So that is something that I would be wary of. You don't want the other factions to get too big, so you want to take some profitable land rather than just think I can blitz Gaul and I can have loads of land and that'll be great. You might have loads of land, but sometimes less is more, and I do find that in this game. Other people would disagree. They would say the more land you have, the more population there are in all, the more tax revenue, the more farming you get, and you have more money eventually. So it just depends how you want to play the game, really. But I would prefer to go for more profitable settlements rather than just going for anything that's available. and just a bit of advice or a bit of forewarning, maybe. I wouldn't put it that far, but if you do take Greece, the Brutii, what they do, they'll just expand north, pretty much. They'll take Dacia and Thrace and Scythian land, and that's good. Let them take those lands, because then they have a similar predicament to what the Julii have if they take Gaul. They'll have loads of land, and it's not profitable. None of it borders the ocean at all. So, yeah, let them take those lands. You don't want them to be strong by the end of the game. The Scipii you can't really stop. They'll just amble through North Africa. I wouldn't recommend trying to stop that. Maybe just try and get to them in time. They do have only one city in Italy, so that's a vulnerable point in terms of the Scipii, is the fact that they can be kicked off the mainland of Italy very, very quickly. So yeah, this is the Julii. I'm going to have a look at the buildings now. The buildings are all the same for the 3 Roman factions, apart from the temples that are available. Each faction has 3 different temples, each doing different things. So let's have a look at the temples for the Julii. Okay, so there are 3 available. Ceres, I believe that is pronounced, Bacchus, and Jupiter. So the first temple of Ceres, a Pantheon, the highest level of temple, huge population bonuses for happiness and law. So up to 45% public order bonus. So any settlement with this Pantheon in, they're going to be happy. And the population growth bonus is 2.5%. That is very, very large. So imagine if you put this settlement in Patavium, it'll be growing at a ridiculous rate. You have good access to Patavium early on in the game, and the population growth won't get out of control because you still have this temple. Obviously, you'll have earlier temples in the game, but they have access to happiness bonuses as well. Next Pantheon is of Bacchus. I believe that is the god of wine. The Dionysus is the equivalent in Greece. And they also have a happiness population order bonus. 50% this Pantheon has for the happiness bonus, and then a 10% due to law, and then also a 1% population growth bonus as well. So this is more about happiness, but it is some growth bonus as well. So that's good as well. So I would put this in a particularly difficult settlement if there's a settlement with a complete different culture to you. I know out of all the settlements in the game, I struggle to keep hold of the Egyptian settlements. So, although Julii do not normally expand into Egypt, if I were to do so, this is the temple I'd put in here. I would put Bacchus. And then finally, Jupiter, the king of the gods, has also a large happiness population bonus, public order bonus, along with law as well, and then the population growth bonus. So the Julii temples are all about happiness and population growth, whereas let's say the Brutii is more about experience the troops gained there. So something to consider. And of course you can train the Arcani in the Pantheon. I mentioned the Arcani in the first video of the Scipii, so if you want to see that, then you can go and click on that. So this is my advice for the Julii, pretty much. So yeah, you can advance into Gaul. If you're going to go for Gaul, honestly, there isn't too much advice to give. It's just go through it and just take it. I mean, they're hugely divided, Gaul. They have lots of different enemies, and there's nothing particularly difficult about that, in my opinion, especially if you're more of an advanced player. But what would be interesting is that if people tried expanding east, that would be an interesting twist on the matter. And another island that you can get early on is Carolus, this settlement here, on the coast of Sardinia. So you can take that as well if you want. So yeah, that's all I've got for the Julii today. And I will be coming up with some more faction guides very, very soon for all the different factions in Rome Total War. Just giving some general advice and tips through my experience of playing the game. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.